Well, for me personally, it's you actually don't realise the lifelong friends that you're going to make from the game of basketball. You know, I, I met somebody, at an under 14 championship, and 25 years later, we're still great friends, and I don't think you realise the effect that basketball will have on your life, and the amount of good people that you will meet. That it doesn't matter if you see each other every weekend or once every 3 years. It's like you saw them yesterday, and
Mm.
it really has been a great experience being a referee with the amount of people that I've had to interact with, and I call them lifelong friends, and I'm a better person for the amount of people I've been able to meet.
And I think that social connection is even more relevant in today's current environment. I got asked the other day, do you miss refereeing? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Not just being on the floor, but I actually miss that social connection that Phil, we met back in 1996. I won't say that too loud. But we sort of see each other, and we have this through the referee fraternity. We're like one family. You end up traveling and you go to a different state and you bump into somebody that, didn't we referee this or didn't we see this? But that it also translates, we joke about the sportsman's nod. You'll be walking through somewhere. It'll be a shopping centre or it'll be an airport, and a player or a coach will walk past you, and because you're not in your referee uniform, they sort of look at you and go, I sort of know you, and you sort of like give that, yeah, hi, how you going?
Try doing different hair, Jason. Try doing different hair, and they don't recognise you at all.
But I think the other thing that we don't realise is that from officiating, we build up so many life skills that we don't realise when we first start refereeing. We learn about communication, we learn about teamwork, we learn about punctuality, how to deal with pressure, how to deal with conflict. And we learn all this sort of stuff as we're that 12, 13, 14-year-old referee. And then as we progress into our late 20s, early 30s and become adults, we sort of look there and go, oh, this basketball refereeing stuff actually translates into real life. Because the majority of the thing that we do on the court is communicating or decision making. And it's something that I don't think we recognise why we're doing it. And it's not until we get a little bit older that we actually look back and go, well, refereeing gave me this foundation of a social connection as well as communication skills.
I think basketball showed me the world. Basketball opened the world up to me. There was no way I would have visited some of the countries and places that I have if it were not for basketball. Opportunities are enormous. It's just opened everything up. And the people that I've met from it has been incredible. You talk about life skills, Jason. I think also you learn mental toughness. There are games when you make calls, and maybe we shouldn't say this too loud for past players and coaches. You make calls and they were not great, but you have to sleep with yourself. You have to wake up again, and you have to get back out there, and you have to be tough enough to keep going at it and learn from it. So it actually can make you create a mental toughness as well when you're refereeing, and the more you go on. But I think what Phil was saying and what Jason's saying, the lifelong friends that we have around, locally, Australia-wise, internationally, when you referee there, it's incredible. It's fabulous. It's amazing. And it's not just other referees. You become friends with players, other coaches. You meet all different types of people.
Yeah, I think the friendship is the biggest thing. I think elaborating on what you were just saying around the mental toughness, I think that being a player for however many years and then transitioning to the refereeing side, I think the mental commitment to the game, to continuously be prepared to evolve and learn from your mistakes. We do make calls out on the court that we know aren't right in that time, and then we kind of have to live with it for the rest of the game or for that moment in time. But to be able to make a call one end that yeah, I definitely should not have called that, or I misjudged that, and then go down the other end and forget about that and then be ready to referee the next play, is a real mental skill that takes a while to evolve. And I think that sports mindset skill training is really beneficial for referees, and I think that's something that we can look down a lot more as well as referees, is to look at avenues to really increase that and to provide that mental resilience, that some games it is just a matter of you're wearing the stripes and it's not you, and that's completely fine. And then other games you can have an absolute killer game, but you've got to come off and be okay with that to then be consistent with it in the next game as well, and not let that get the better of yourself. But I think that mental side of it is a really big thing that I definitely underestimated stepping onto the court as a referee. That first QVL game was pretty daunting. I ref Townsville and Mackay. I played for Townsville for 5 years, or cheered for them on the bench, against Mackay, and that was one of the bigger rivalries. So I'm reffing players that I've either played with or against for the past few years, to then go out and referee them, and some of them, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is just a lot in my face all at once. So I think that mental stuff is a massive thing.
That's so the resilience is what we talk about, and that's it's a strong trait within the elite referees, and it's something that our grassroots referees coming through the system have to learn how to do. And that, I'm actually reading a book at the moment which is on mindset, and that's so important, Jack, that you talk about, is the mindset of referees, and especially in the real world outside basketball, we're talking about mental health, and we know that it's about instilling into referees, it's not personal, it's not the shirt that you wear. They're yelling at the shirt you wear, they're not yelling at you, the person. And you know, we are human. Well, sometimes they are, but we are human, and we deal in emotion.
That's okay too.
But we deal in emotion, and it's the saying about emotion clouds judgment, and trying to have referees realise that no matter what level they're at, is don't become emotional, don't take it personal. But we need to be able to teach people how to do that. We need to give them the skills or the tools to be able to, how do I change from having a fixed mindset into a growth mindset? Yeah, I kicked the call down that end of the floor. You know what? I didn't do it on purpose. I just didn't see what you're talking about. And that's something that even coming out of the season that we just came out, one of the directions we got from Michael and from John was, you know, we want to communicate. We want you guys to communicate as much as you can, because that's what the coaches and players want.
That's a tough question. Like, I was very fortunate with the games that I was able to achieve as a referee. But probably my biggest highlight was having my parents watch me in London at the Paralympic Games. That meant a lot, because my father was, a big mentor of mine over my life, obviously, and he refereed basketball for almost 60 years. So, it meant a lot to have him and mum there watching. But yeah, I mean, obviously, any opportunity you get to do a gold medal game, no matter what the competition, it's always a highlight. So certainly fortunate to, be able to do the women's gold medal game in Rio. So that was obviously another highlight.
Oh,
stick with the same order, it's working.
Yeah.
You go, Jason.
Somebody else asked me this question because my local association's interviewing me on Saturday for doing a Zoom session. And I'm like, ugh. And they asked me the same question. And I said, it's actually a really hard question to answer, because there's so many different things as you go through the system. And I guess I've got a couple. I guess the first one would be when I did my first NBL game, because obviously we all aim to go through to that pathway. And the next one would have been when I did my first WNBL game, bit same as Phil. Like, my parents got to come to my first WNBL game, and I was like, they've supported me in my officiating. And then I guess this is going to sound really weird, but two of my other highlights is number one, refereeing Taylor Flint's first game on WNBL. because I got to mentor her through her SEABL/NBL1 career, and then to do her first WNBL game, and knowing that she was so proud of her achievement, and I had just this little minuscule thing to do that. And probably the other highlight was an SEABL game back in Bath, which was with Ron Clark, who's from Werribee, and David Baddock, who's on WNBL as well, who's from Werribee. So it was 3 Werribee people on a Siebel game. Ron Clark's my mentor, and I was Dave Baddock's mentor at the time. So it was sort of like one of those things where all those personal achievements, yes, I've done grand finals and I've been lucky and privileged enough to do it. But when I actually sat down and started reflecting back on it, it sort of goes back to the earlier conversation about the people you've met along the way, and those people that have had an influence on your career, and then the influence you've had on other people's career.
I've probably had a few little, scratch that. Probably had some pretty amazing things happen at different times. I think one of the greatest games I remember was actually I think it was the 96 Women's WNBL Grand Final with Adelaide and Melbourne. Watching Ray Tomlinson and Jan Sterling fight it out, double overtime, and everyone came off that game absolutely exhausted, absolutely spent. The players were spent, the coaches were spent, we were spent, and it was just an amazing game. And I still remember that game even now. I've been lucky to referee overseas in several places. I think my time in the WNBA was amazing. I was lucky enough to attend an NBA camp in Utah, which is where they do the final camp for everyone entering into the NBA for the season. So these guys are all full-time career professional referees, and they're in the classroom every morning, and it's solid work. And then in the afternoon, they're out there refereeing games. They're doing fitness work. They're with NBA players. It's amazing, but and it's very real. And they talk about how they prepare for games and what they're doing in change rooms. And it was an amazing learning experience. So I think it was the next year I went on and refereed in the WNBA. And again, I mean, the way they present their games, it's a show. The whole game is a show. It's like going to theatre, to a show. It's everything is performed, and it's big, and there's people, and it's enormous, and it's a lot of pressure. Like there's people right on you, but it is these amazing athletes that are performing, and to be part of that and traveling around the States and being part of how that works, very much like the film Forget Paris. If ever anyone wants to watch that, it's almost very true for what the referees sometimes live, how they go from place to place. But I have to say, I think one of the biggest moments was when, unfortunately for poor Billy Mildenhall, when he went down in that game just prior to the Sydney Olympics, and he got injured, and I had to step on for him and do the Dream Team versus Australia, which, would be scary enough, but they'd been fighting, and they were still fighting. And I was quite little, and I'd already refereed a game, and I wasn't that experienced, and they were still fighting. So I was completely intimidated, trying to get changed. There's NBC, there's all these CBA, blah, blah, all these different TV people and coming in and trying to interview me. And I just remember Ray Hunt taking me to the side and saying, do you know what, Caroline? It's another game of basketball. They still travel, they still foul, they still do everything as per any other game. Just go out there and do it the same. Best advice he could have given me, and it was phenomenal. There were photos taken of people yelling at me. Unfortunately, they're 7 foot tall, and I'm not, so I heard not a word. So it was fun. It was phenomenal.
That's pretty cool. That hopefully we all get the chance to do that. That'd be awesome.
I hope you do too.
Yeah. I think, my biggest highlight's probably nothing like the other 3. So first of all, congratulations on that. That's really awesome. Really cool experiences. Mine would probably be there's a few of them. My WNBL debut was a pretty good one. Mum flew up for that, and I had some close friends there. But I also got to step out on the court with my mentors, like you said, Jace with Taylor. Being on the reverse side of that, I think that's a really cool thing to be able to do. So my game was with Scotty and Kylie Vovinen. For me, being 4 years into refereeing, they're the two that got me to that point, along with a few other guys in Queensland. But to step out on the court with them, televised, all that hype behind it in my head, thinking that's a pretty big thing, that was pretty cool. And Scott trying to stir me up before the game, saying, well, since you're doing the jump ball, you're wearing the mic. I was pretty adamant that was not happening, with the likes of good mate Susie on the court with me. But that was pretty cool to do that game. And I remember having a call with Susie not long after that game later in the week about some calls and kind of that admitting you did the wrong thing. And on the phone, I was like, oh, Suze, that third foul I called on you, that was absolute trash. And she's like, yeah, it was. But you're lucky I knew it was you, and I didn't want to yell at you because it was your first game. And I was like, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Susie.
See,
I think she knew I was a bit psyched about that game. So that was cool. My other ones happened last year. In August, I got the chance to go to the national tryouts for the NBA G League. That was a pretty cool experience. Nowhere near what you've just gone through, Carolyn, but that really elite professional environment. You go into a closed, we go into a closed gym. It's invited athletes, only athletes and referees, and a whole sideline of scouts for the G League and the NBA there. That was a really cool experience. That's one of my highlights so far, and then hopefully that progresses through.